Well, I grew up in Columbia Heights. We were like middle, upper class. My mom, she worked a lot. She worked like 16-hour shifts. She's very family oriented. It was just me, her, and my two older brothers. I was a cheerleader, I ran track, I played basketball, I was a peer mediator, and I was on student council. And fortunately, there was this one boy I had a crush on. I met one of my friends, and she lived like 2 blocks from me. And her mom worked overnights, and my mom worked during the morning and afternoon. So it fit perfect to just sneak over at her house and stay the night over there. One particular night, we invited the boy that I had a crush on, and he came to her house with 2 men. I was 14, and I was raped. I didn't want to tell my mom. I think I was more scared of being out without an adult. So I didn't tell her right away until I went to another one of my friend's house, and I was telling her, and her mother overheard us talking. And she told me that if I didn't tell my mom, she was. So that's when I went and told my mom, and she's a nurse. So she tried to put me in therapy, tried to talk to me and get me to go to the hospital and stuff, but I was just really angry, and I didn't know how to like articulate my words or how to express myself in a healthy way. So everything was just a lash out with my mom, just running away, kicking doors, skipping school, not doing chores, not coming home. And then she finally said, okay, fine, you can go live with your dad. My dad was a pimp. He called my stepmoms ladies of the night. He wasn't very nice to them at all. Me living with my mom, never seeing like violence, and then being with my dad, I still remember the first violent attack I saw him do. One of my stepmoms was in the kitchen with him, and they were arguing, and he was cooking, and he had a huge pot of rice and water boiling on the stove. He picked up the pot and he just poured it on her back. And I remember seeing her body just flop to the floor, and she was yelling, and he just stepped over her and asked me if I was hungry. And I told him no. But when I was 18, my dad died, and I felt like it was just like me against the world, pretty much. But I hung out with my best friend more, and I knew I needed a job and I needed to make money. So she was telling me about doing massages. We did it like 2 girl massages, and first it started with hand jobs I wasn't very comfortable with. And then it turned into full-blown sex. I remember always taking several showers. Like I would take like 4 or 5 showers a day because I never felt clean, but I always felt like something in me was lost. It was like left behind every time. And I remember I left and I was walking downtown Minneapolis by GameStop. And there was a car, and it circled me about 3 times. And then he pulled up and he asked me if I needed a ride. And I told him about my situation with my best friend. And he downplayed it like, oh, no, you shouldn't be doing those massages. You were made to be an escort. I didn't know what an escort was at the time, and he described it to me as having these beautiful dresses and just going out on these fancy dinners. I was like, okay, well, I'm game for that. And he took me on a $2,000 shopping spree, so I got to buy all these clothes. He got me a cell phone, and we went to the nail shop. He got my hair done. So I had my first call, and when I went on that call, it was like he said. I had my beautiful dress on, and we went to dinner, and then we went back to the guy's condo. When we were there, he initiated sex, and I declined, and I thought everything was fine. So when he went to drop me back off at home, I'm thinking I just have to pay an agency fee like I've done in the past. But before I even had my second foot through the door, I remember he snatched all the money from me, and he hit me so hard, like I spun and I hit the floor. That's the moment when I knew my life was not going to be the same as it was prior. He already had a flight set up to send me out of town. So I worked a lot in the brothels in Nevada. I never really worked at a brothel where I felt safe or where there was a possibility where I couldn't be hurt, because usually there's just the bartender, and she's a little old lady or a younger gal, and they just have a timer. So when your time's up, they'll come get you, but if someone's being violent or threatening you in that room, there's no one really to come there to help you. I know one guy told me if I didn't do what he told me to do, he could snap my neck before I even got to the panic button. So I just did what he told me to do. There was one guy who would come see me in the brothels often. He was a truck driver. He was nice, but he would pay for 2 hours. We wouldn't even have to have sex, but I would have to be in my panty and my bras. And we would just talk. Like, I would say he kind of became a friend, but I remember this one particular time he started asking me like, well, do you like doing this, or would you want to live a different way? And I had told him yeah, and he promised me that he would get me back to Minnesota and he would get me away from there and away from my trafficker. At first I kind of brushed it off like, okay, whatever, but he told me to meet him at this hotel that was right by a Flying J. And so I remember later on that night, I hopped out the window and I had on like these 6-inch heels, and I was like running up this dirt road, and the dirt road seemed like it took forever, but I got to where the Flying J was and to the hotel room. He was there and he said he had a room for us to sleep in and we would leave in the morning. And when I walked in the room, I was really, really surprised because there were 2 beds in there. One bed for me and one bed for him. So we stayed the night there. He didn't try anything, and he linked me with 2 other truck drivers that got me back to Minnesota, and neither one of them hit on me or wanted any like sexual gratification or anything. And that was the first time anyone was really nice to me, just genuinely being nice to me and didn't want anything from me. When I got back to Minnesota, I was back for a couple days. The little bit of money I did have on me, it went pretty fast because I had a cocaine addiction. But I remember I was in North Minneapolis and I was walking to go visit my mom. And I was cutting through this gas station and I could just feel this like quick gush of wind come from behind my thighs. And when I turned around, it was a Cadillac, and my trafficker was hopping out the passenger side of the car, and he had a bat in his hand. When he was coming toward me, I don't really remember that much, but I remember he was coming toward me, and I remember he swung the bat one time, and I kind of stepped back, and I turned around to run, but everything went black. The first time I woke up, it was some people over me. They were asking me if I was okay, but I blacked out again. And when I woke up the second time, they were putting staples in the back of my head. I had to have 7 staples. And they were telling me that, I guess, after I had fell, he started kicking me and yelling obscenities at me and stuff, and the gas station attendant threatened to call the police, and that's when he fled. After the nurses had talked to me for a little bit, I felt like I was bombarded with the police rushing in the room, and that made me very uncomfortable and scared because I was always taught you don't talk to the police no matter what. And I remember they were asking me who did this and why won't I turn over a name, and I really wouldn't respond. But I was thinking to myself, if he did this for me just leaving, like what do you think he's gonna do if I tell you who he is? The police eventually did pick me up and arrested me. When I was in county jail, I was in SEG, and I asked the CO for a different book to read, and the book he gave me was Walking Prey. In that book, they talked about breaking free, and at that time I didn't know breaking free was in Minnesota. So then when I was sentenced and I was in prison, my case manager asked me what were my plans when I was released from prison, and I remember telling her that the only thing I knew how to do was to lay on my back. And she told me that I need to figure out what I wanted to do, otherwise I was going to end up back in prison or they weren't going to release me. I thought about it, and a week later when I went back to meet with her, I told her that I wanted to help prevent all the stuff I went through being in the life. And she went to Breaking Free's website and printed out the information about them and was like, I think you should contact them when you get released. When I was released, I did treatment for a year, and I walked past this red room and I heard the word prostitution. And when I peeked in the room, I asked them what they were talking about, and Jennifer Gaines was in there, and she said, well, this is SOS, I'm from Breaking Free.